Hello and welcome back to the art studio here in Earthlingborough with me, Jamie Poole. We're going to be doing a course, and thank you for signing up. We're going to be doing a course for the next 10 weeks where you're going to learn a few different new art skills. And we'll be doing techniques including pencils, watercolour, and then veering off into some colour pencils. And perhaps even just mixing those things up like we normally do. Welcome to those people who are new to the class. Please follow along. If you've got any questions at any point, please put a message in the chat on Zoom, or if you've got something you want to ask later, you can send me an email or send me a message via my telephone, my mobile phone, or you can email me if I just said that as well. So don't be afraid to ask questions at any point, because that is essentially why I am here. So this year I've been particularly inspired by nature, and that's partly because of the work that I've been doing as an artist, but also because during lockdown we've had the chance to go on lots of walks and strolls and go running and things, which is what I've started to do. And we've had the chance to really appreciate nature as well, because everywhere has been much quieter. We can hear the birds and all that sort of thing as well. So I've took the opportunity perhaps for this course to extend and do some more work on nature. And a few people have asked as well if we can look at using watercolours too. So we're going to do a little bit of watercolour, starting off with pencils like we normally do. And I've also come across this fantastic book that my wife bought me a number of years ago, which has some absolutely gorgeous watercolour paintings inside. It's called Lost Worlds by Robert Macfarlane and Jackie Morris. So we're going to have a little look at some of that stuff in a few minutes. Ooh. So let's just go over to the desktop. So I'm going to be working today from this picture just here, which is of a magpie that I found, which is a really nice photograph. And I just went online and found myself this picture. It's basically quite a large photograph, which I got from the browser Bing. So if you go to Bing, the browser, and you can get to it via any other browser really, but if you click on and you write Bing in the search bar and then click on it in the listings below, it'll come up. Now you can do a search from there. I think you'll find it on Explorer most easily, but you can do a search on there. If you click on images, and then you'll see a little icon which looks like a funnel. If you click on that, you can then choose what size and quality you want the image to be. So rather than finding these very tiny images that go, even if you enlarge them, go really pixelated when you print them, you can get some really nice high quality and large pictures to work from, which is what I've done here with this lovely little magpie picture. So I particularly liked on the magpie, I liked all of the colours and the contrast in the black and the white, the feathers as well. So it's a really nice picture to be working from. So we're going to do that in pencil first of all, but before I do that, we'll have a quick look at the Lost Worlds book just over here. So if I just go back, if I go to full screen just over here, let's get comfy. So as I said, it's a really interesting book because it's got some really good ideas about composition and arranging the pages. But the artworks themselves are gorgeous. You've got these lovely grass pictures here with tons of like little details and things in here. And the nice thing I like about it, particularly because I'm interested in words in art, is the letters that have been used in there as well. And then a lot of the work has been painted on this kind of gold leaf texture just underneath. It's not something I've done before, but I think it's a really nice effect. And then you've got these beautiful paintings with the lovely sort of qualities of the watercolour with the blending and things on it. And then up here you've got the nice owl with the feathers and things on there too. So you've got these fantastic illustrations in here, but one that I wanted to just show everybody some really nice ideas. So this one's quite nice because of the negative spaces that have been used around it. From a design point of view, it draws your attention to the branches and to the letters perhaps, but not the bird. But you do notice the bird shape, of course. And then you've got these wonderful pictures of magpies, and there's some writing here which is Magpie Manifesto it's called, or something like that. So there's this poetry accompanying these illustrations. So these are the kinds of qualities that I'm hoping we can get in some of our work over the next few weeks, perhaps. All right, so this is one picture that I thought, yeah, I'd like to have a little try at tackling some of these ideas. So I'm going to show you a few techniques and demonstrate a few things as we work over the next few weeks. And then there's this wonderful picture of a newt. I think it's a moorhen at the back, or a coot, or whatever you call them. Paths of words, an otter. So this subject will give us lots and lots. Look at that, it's fantastic. Give us lots and lots of different themes and ideas that we can work from, and it can veer off into a landscape as well, perhaps during the next 10 weeks, but we should have loads of fun. But this is a beautiful book, just to look through and feel and have get some ideas from. Okay, so I'll just put that over there for a moment. So we'll start off with drawing our bird. I'm going to turn my page portrait so that we can work on that nicely. And then I shall grab a pencil that we can use to draw with, which I've now put down. There it is. So when we're drawing anything, what you need to remember is, first of all, is drawing the larger shapes on the bird in order to draw it as accurately as possible. There are other techniques you can use to get accuracy, but for the first one that I do today, I'm going to sketch it out as I would do it normally, so that you can get some ideas about how to go about doing this. So here we go. Now the wings kind of go at an angle like this, so I'm going to put a line through there. I'll just come in a little bit closer, perhaps so you can see it a bit better. Okay, so I'm just going to, a nice way to work from the beginning is very loosely, so that you don't end up becoming too precious about what you're doing, and it allows you to make the mistakes that you're going to make when drawing something out. So I'm just going to sort of see if I can just see where the bird's wings are in this picture very loosely. I'm going to have the tail feather going off the edge, I think, on this one. So that it has this feeling of flying through the picture or the space. So So already going down to some of the smaller details here, such as the beak. And the thing to do as well is to stand away from the picture occasionally or jump back from it just a bit so that you can judge all of the shapes a little bit more accurately and from a slightly different perspective, of course. So I've got the main sort of shapes in there now. Perhaps the head's not quite right, I might have to adjust that. Now this bit looks like it might need to be a little bit wider, perhaps. There we are. And then you can see just along here there's a larger area, or a slightly smaller area actually compared to the rest of it. But I'm just going to be putting that in over there now. And you see, once you've got a lot of the larger shapes drawn in, you can then start to adjust those larger shapes to make them match more accurately the image that you're drawing. So obviously drawing the white area on here now. So obviously I'm not drawing in any of these smaller details just yet. I'm just working out mostly where those white parts on the feathers will appear. And if you go down here, I drew it as more of a fan shape, but there's actually a different kind of curve just here that I can put in. And this tail feather starts a little bit closer than I first observed it doing. So let's just bring that in a little, just there, before we go up that way. Okay, and then the white tips on the magpie at the top here, and this is where you can use other areas of the picture to measure it off against. So the back end of the bird from there straight up to around this area is going to give me the starting point for the white areas in the drawing as well. So I'll just bring that up a little bit more because some of those feathers go around there a bit. So you can see, I mean, I've drawn this quite a little bit darker than perhaps I would do normally, but you get the idea, you can see the idea now about where things are going to be. And at this point, of course, now I can start thinking about where some of the other shapes will be. And obviously there'll be some of these lines I'll be able to remove using either a putty rubber or a normal rubber like this to make them neaten up the drawing as I progress. Okay, so I'll zoom back out a little bit now so we can see what's going on. Right, so if I'm happy with this, so I'm just gonna quick check over most areas, and then I can start thinking about putting in a little bit more detail. I'm not going to go too heavy with my marks, although I might go a bit darker for the film, just so that I get an idea. I'm just going to put in a few lines, and the thing to do is to look down past those lines vertically. So if you draw straight down, you can see where these areas should be going, and this feather, look, it's almost vertical just here. So that's the fourth feather along. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I put in, leave a space and go vertical like that, and then the next one. The other thing you can do, of course, is you can use your pencil to get those angles right as well. I'm not too worried about getting everything absolutely spot on at this stage, because I can, if I want to, I can go back and change it all. So there's a little bit of freedom within that for you to play around with the shapes and the angles. So got that one, that one, that one there, and they become less kind of pointed, the feathers, as they come around, which is nice. But the point really where they all radiate from is just on the front of the wing here. So I mean, that would probably be a good thing to look at whilst you're drawing these feathers as well. They're not necessarily all going to go to an exact spot, but what we can do is start to work out. Now I'm just seeing where this white area is that I put in earlier. So that's this area. It's quite rough, mind you, just above the feathers, just above the white area, we can see the feathers sort of coming through. And then from that radiating point just here, we start to go away from that. So I'm just going to start putting in a few of these, still moving these angles around as I go. There we go. And there's this more round plump one down here. So now I've got the feathers in. I can also come back down here in a little while. There's another shape within this larger shape here, which comes down to this bump, which is just along here like this. There. And then another one. So this bit here, this white area, actually is a little bit thicker than I imagined first, or than I observed, I should say, first. So I'm just going to put that in. And then we've got these feathers which are kind of laying a little, they seem to be laying across a bit more, but they kind of join up with the other ones quite nicely. We'll put those lines in. And then these white and the black areas converge a bit more as they come around too. So there we are. That's good. There. Now I'm going to whip over this side and have a look at the shape of the head. Now the head doesn't come out quite as far as I sketched it in earlier, so I'm just going to adjust that a little bit if I can. Oops. So it narrows off there and comes in, and the beak extends a little bit further through here. And then the eye is just beyond that there. Okay, and then we can look at some of the more subtle, if we're happy with that, we can look at some of the more subtle lines that go off of that. There we go. Great. Okay. Now, good place to start with the tail, I suppose. I've started putting a few feathers in, but there's a line that goes through the centre there, which is one of the main larger tail feathers. I'm just gonna, there's a thin side and a slightly thicker side to that feather. Put that in, and there's another one just next to it. Got this line which represents the middle of another feather. There we are. Yeah, there's two there. Just gonna put another one in. I'll do for a minute, and then the radiating area over here. So it starts off somewhere there. They got these really sharp feathers down the bottom here, and then they kind of go a bit more stubby as they come round. The important thing to do, of course, is to get the angle of these lines right. So I've got just to change the angle of this line here and here and here and another one. Slight curve maybe, but not too much, and then they all radiate just like the other side towards a point somewhere above there. So let's just do a few more of those. 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 5. Now the angle starts to turn as it goes off this way, so I'm just putting in some lines now to represent that turn in the wings. To actually go back and up a little bit that way as well, like that. Okay, up, in, up, in, up, in. Probably got a few more feathers in there, but I'm not too worried about that. There we go. So, and then we've got these feathers which come down here. That'll do. There we are. Okay, so we've got basically the shape of the bird and its wings on here. I think the bottom wing is a little bit bigger than I intended, but I kind of like it anyway, so I'm just going to carry on working with that. Now, there's all sorts of ways of adding marks and things in. So, what I'm going to do first of all is start with shading on the head. I'm going to get right nice and close in there, and we'll work on shading this head a little bit first. So obviously the light is coming from above on the head a little bit, so we've got this nice dark shadow coming around the face and the beak and so forth. Hopefully this won't be too reflective, as it sometimes is. Now I want to show a little bit of the texture in the bird's feathers and things as well, so I'm going to try not just to shade it in any old direction, but to use more of a dashing technique in there. See if I'm getting any closer. I can't get any closer than that just now. Maybe something to look at. So I'm just doing these dashing movements because of the texture of his hair, of his feathers on his head. I remember doing that during another drawing before, calling fur feathers and feathers fur or whatever. Right. So I'm obviously quite, committing myself quite a lot here, keeping the little dashes and marks going in a similar direction as I draw. The idea is to get a little bit of tone straight in there. I feel quite confident that things are in the right place. So I'm not going to worry too much about anything else at the moment. So here I'm holding the pencil on the side of my hand, so I can work a bit more loosely as well. The way that you use the pencil can also determine how the marks and the feeling of the drawing comes out as well. So it's important just to experiment with different ways of holding your pencil as well. It's actually, the closer you look at this magpie, you can see there's little shapes, even though it all looks quite similar in, almost like a flat tone. You've got some different marks. So I've just changed the way I'm using the pencil for that now. So my plan is, I think, to either do a new magpie next time, or choose a new one to do watercolour with. Now I've just taken out some of that shadow in there, so I can work back into the eye a bit more. Often it's easy to make eyes just a little bit too big or a bit bigger than they need to be, so just watch out for that and keep comparing what you've done, just to see with the photo, just to see if it's working, it's the right scale. Oh, there we go. Probably just do with getting this at an angle slightly, I think, or make change this. A little bit better. So to get a nice deep tone in there, you might need to go over it and build up layers of graphite on top of each other to bring that depth into the picture. This is one thing I find myself saying quite a bit is, work into it, add more shadows and things, make the shadows count and stand out and things. And it really does have a strong impact on the drawing when you've got a good variety of strong tones and shadows, as well as getting obviously the accuracy in the picture as well. If you find that as well that your picture is smudging a bit, you can also put a piece of just paper underneath your hand. To help shield the side of your hand from the page or the paper. That way you keep your drawing a bit cleaner. You're still going to need to neaten it up a little bit, but okay. So we're starting to get that head in. It's not quite as dark on the screen, I think, but there you can see it. If I just pick it up slightly, you can see it's starting to pick up with deeper tones and things on there. So I'm going to just going to leave that just for a little bit. I may come back in just a second. And we're going to add a shadow just here now on that part of the wing, just down here. So where the white area is on the wing, we're just going to add some tone into there. So now what I'm doing is very light sort of hatching, just to start bringing in some hints of tone on that part of the wing. Now you might not necessarily go really dark at this point either, because like we've been doing with the black, is building up lots of layers of the graphite on top. So in fact I'm just adding some shadow that indicates the contour of the wing as it comes around from the front and onto the top. So a little bit of cross hatching for that. So cross hatching is just lines literally next to each other like this, but obviously if you can do them much more subtly as well, so you can go from really dark and then gradually release the pressure on your pencil so you end up with a dark to light tone. And then a cross hatch, which is also useful, you go in a slightly different direction to the one you just did, and you end up with, again, building up graphite on top quite gradually. So I've added a little bit of tone just around here on that part of the wing. Just going to neaten that up a bit. and I'll probably be working on this drawing a little bit more during our lesson next week, where I'll explain a few more things as well. So moving on from there, what I really love in a drawing is contrast. So here on this part of the wing here, you can see how it goes from really light, pure white almost, into this lovely dark tone just across here. Just bring that a bit closer. I'll focus how well I can focus on it. So you can see around here all the different kinds of textures that I was talking about. You can almost see there's these little swirly bits, and then up here you can see how it goes from dark to light, but you've got these little patches and things. You can put those in, of course, afterwards by dabbing on it with a putty rubber as well. So let's just get that back in. So we're going to work up there a little bit more. Just come back out slightly so you can see what's going down, as they say in Wellingborough. Right, so now we're going to start putting in some slightly heavier tone along here. I can use that as my hand rest again, that piece of paper, and I can also just keep an eye as well on the actual shape. So you know, you're constantly making those adjustments to the shapes as you go along there a little bit as well. So I'm going to put this in here, and then I'll use the old putty rubber to put in a bit more texture. Now of course I'm using here a 4B pencil. You could start with a 2B, work in with a 4B, and then go even harder or softer with a 6B pencil a bit later on. I think I've got a 6B somewhere over here. Yeah, so you've got 6B here. You can then build in even more graphite on top to try and bring things in so they get darker and therefore have more form and contouring on the bird. I'm just working with this at the moment. So I've gone over there, and those patchy bits that I talked about that add texture, I can dab and put those in a little bit, and then I can put in some shadow back into it. It's quite hard to see from where you are, of course, but that's the general gist of it. And I'll come up here. So when we get to this point, there's a bit of a bump that comes out the side. Not quite where I had it originally, but that's fine. Just make adjustments as we go along. And then the black bits here actually link to the feathers that we've already got. So I'm just trying to put a little bit of a bump in on each feather. A little bit of a shadow there. Darken it down, and then there's a bit of a bump as it comes onto that feather. Okay, so the reason that the head looks a bit different on here is because of the light again. If I do that, you can see how it's starting to take shape a bit more. The bottom of that beak perhaps needs to be darker around here. I've never drawn a magpie actually. And then I'll do some work on this wing next. So I'm going to come back out again. So because the wings are moving, the feathers at the top here on this area are a little bit lighter towards the back, so I'm going to shade those in now, but do them a little bit lighter to begin with, and you could hatch that in or just sort of scumble it in if you like, just to get that started, and then we can build up the tone later if you want to as well. So as I said, if you want to find pictures, a great place to find them is on Pinterest. I've actually found working from directly from my phone or a computer to be quite good, purely because what you can do very easily on a computer is you can zoom in and out of the image and get really close up to those details that you're looking for when drawing something. So it's quite convenient in a way, because sometimes you print things off on a printer and they come out perhaps not as good, the colours aren't as good, but or the details aren't as good. So it's quite nice sometimes to, I think, to work from a device. Some people might just think, oh, I want to get away from those sorts of things, which is perfectly understandable, I suppose. So we're getting in, so that feather there is actually rather big, so I'm just going to change that. It comes right down an angle, so it's more this sort of shape. Just there, a bit fuzzy. And then we got this one. We've got a beautiful curve to them, the ends of the feathers as well, which is worth spending a little bit of time, I think, to get that detail nice and clear. And then these feathers then become a bit darker. So I'm just going to put those in now. I'm neaten up some of my old construction lines, get rid of some of those, and put the details back in. So the bottom of these feathers have also got the beginnings of the white areas that we were talking about earlier on. So you can start to put those in. And one just on the end there. Which is where it kind of stops before then going on to the plainer feathers. Stunning birds, really. Birds we see every day that we take for granted. That's usually the way. You see things all the time, but they are very beautiful. I think they're supposed to take things, aren't they? Oh, there's these birds are. They like shiny things, apparently. That's what my gran always used to say. So now what I'm doing is I'm just hatching. Let's get a bit closer. So I'm just hatching along these darker areas of the feathers, just along here now, so that I can, like I did with the white shadows on the front of the bird, I'm just mapping out how big and the whereabouts of different shadows on here. That way we've got something to work from. We can see where the white bits are, so it comes around on this wing. Let's bring that down a little bit. It comes around here and then it's cut off by a darker area that shoots through the middle there. And then there's another one behind it, but it doesn't join up perfectly because of the wings being pulled apart like a fan. So, and there's another line between here and here as well, and another one here and here. So I can now see exactly where the edges, or on my drawing anyway, I can see exactly where those fan bits are. So you can now see how the fan has pulled apart this pattern or white area on the wing, and I can start building into that now, which I'll do for the next few minutes. And then I just want to show another way of accurately drawing that one or two of you might not be familiar with, but works very well if you're just starting out actually. So here we go. Let's put in a little bit of shadow. So I'm not completely going as dark as perhaps the other parts at the moment, but I am starting to think about how this is going to be a bit darker as I progress. There's my bit of paper there. And there's also a little bit of a highlight because one side of the wings, the feathers, is darker than the other because of the fold through the middle. So this little area just here, the top of that feather is a bit lighter than the bottom, so I'm just marking that out as I go along. Actually, the interesting thing is that it's a bit of a curve just here as well, where the wing comes around. And down. we've got this, and some of the shapes start converging and things get a little bit more complicated just around there. That's okay. This is where the shadows were that I marked out earlier, and I can now see those coming through. So my drawing has changed in accordance to what I did earlier. Just there. Going a bit darker. These lighter feathers I'm just making a bit darker, or gone off screen. Behind. Right, and I'll start putting in these shadows that I was doing earlier. I'll start putting those in a bit more heavier. Now there is a lot more sort of work you can do on this, which I'll continue to do during the lesson, but in just a minute or so there's something else I wanted to do, so I'll do that in a second. Once you get involved with something, you kind of don't want to stop really, do you? I'm just trying to leave this area quite, you know, contrasty, but without letting it get too much darker than the other feathers. They're starting to appear a little bit more now. I'm just going to do a little bit on this middle area. Just here. Okay, so and I'm just starting to notice as well on these feathers over here, which I said were lighter, they are lighter, but there are actually some nice little shadows on those feathers as well, which I can lightly hatch in as well. So just a little bit of shadow on some of these wings, feathers, sorry. Okay, so yeah, so this is what we'll be working on during the next lesson or two. We've just launched straight into a little bit of drawing, so it'd be really great, you know, when we're doing these, if you could post them and things so that I can obviously give you some feedback and everything else. Now, just another little tip before we stop today, before I stop this lesson. If you've got a print and you'd like to draw it to the same size, then what you need to do is cut it out so you've got no white edges. This is a great technique for being able to draw everything in the right place. So the thing to do here is place your bird picture, or whatever it is you've decided to draw this lesson, straight down onto the page once you've cut it out, and then do a dot on each corner like that. Okay, and get your ruler and draw a line to make a box exactly the same size as your photo. Like that. Now, rather than measuring once more, you can also fold your photograph in half. And fold it again, and then once more after that, and that way you've kind of already drawn a grid on there. Now you can obviously extend that grid a little bit further. Most of you will have seen this if you worked with me before, but now I've folded this sheet, like I've now got a kind of a grid of squares that you can then mark off on your drawing. So if you do the same thing again, like so, right, and then now this is where you don't want to go too heavy really, because if you go too heavy you've got to get rid of those lines later, so go very lightly if you're going to use a grid. Okay, and then on your photograph you can also put that same grid over the picture. See, if it's a bit glossy you might need to use a pen. If you don't want to go over the, over the picture, you would already have folded it anyway, I suppose. So like that. So now on my A4 sheet of paper I've got a photograph which matches the grid on the piece of paper. So the next thing to do is you can choose the area that you want to work from. So let's say I'm going to work from this one down here. Let's zoom into that. So there's my square, there's my rectangle, or not my square, they're both rectangles aren't they, but there. So that one fits into this area like this, just there. And then you can use your pencil to mark off where these different shapes are going to be. You can even put your pencil exactly on a point, move your pencil out of the way, and do the same again just here. So that gives you the chance then to join up those shapes so that you know the big area, the big shape of the beak, and the shape of the body and everything else. So what it does is it actually just shows you very quickly where everything will go. So I'm just putting in an eye, which appears on that one, like that. So I've already got that simple shape there. You can go as far as you want with it, because you know it should be, if you've done it correctly using this technique, you should get that shape in there. So then what you can do, obviously, you can unfold your picture and you can match it up like that, so you can see how the drawing matches up to the picture. Move that down a bit, and then I can do the same thing once more. So I can fold it back the other way, and I can mark out where everything's going to be going. Like that. And there's the head and the body. Like that. And then even these bits which are right inside, I can make a little dot to show whereabouts they're going to go. And again, it might not be perfect, but what it does is it gets that drawn in really quickly, so you can get cracking with drawing the rest of the bird. So that's a really quick way of doing a grid. And then obviously you can work towards shading it and working into it like I've done. So if you just joined us, or indeed if you're not feeling too confident about drawing something like this bird, the thing to do is try out using the folded grid system. Alright, so I hope you've enjoyed watching that today. It is a little bit of an introduction to the work that we're going to be doing over the next few weeks. So it's not entirely essential for you to watch it beforehand, because I will go through everything once more, and indeed I'll show you a few more things during the lesson as well. Okay, but have a look, see what you think, and then I'll see you in the lesson, which starts on Monday night and Tuesday morning. Okay, see you soon. Cheerio!